It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. Great to have you in studio today. We're kind of covering the Tenderfoot fire and kind of what took place down there by Yarnell for the second time in 3 years. Yavapai County Sheriff's Office spokesperson Dwight Devlin's in studio. Welcome back.
Well, good to see you, Paul.
I don't get to actually speak to you voice to voice much
anymore. No, I'm glad.
face.
I'm glad I made the trip over here to Cottonwood from the distant land of Prescott.
Yeah, it's really good to see you. And then Incident Command Team member Jim Miller in studio as well. Welcome back, Jim. I know you've been here before as well.
Nice to be here again.
Yeah. So we're talking about the Tenderfoot fire. Last week we had Denny Folk in studio, Marcy Slade talking about the emergency management side of it. Tuesday, Becky Salazar from Animal Disaster Services was here, and she kind of talked about the pets and stuff that were coming in from folks and what the do's and don'ts and things. And so we've got you guys in here today to kind of talk about the evacuation portion of it, the part where Jim and his folks are banging on my door, deputies are banging on my door saying it's time to go. So let's start right there. How do you guys first start responding to something like that, and when do you get called?
Well, we got a call on June 8th, which was a Wednesday, about 3:30, about a fire on the very south end of town. Initially 1 acre and moving fast. And of course, you mentioned the town of Yarnell on a fire, and it's all hands on deck. There's a lot of emotion behind it. I mean, you just can't take that out of it. But we had deputies on scene very quickly, and it was obvious to our initial crew that this fire was not going to get contained quickly. Immediate door-to-door notifications and mandatory evacuations on the east side of town. That goes into play right away.
How does that call come in, though, where it's like, okay, we have to evacuate? Is it just when the deputies arrive there and they see, okay, that's fire, these are homes, we have to do it?
Yeah, there was a supervisor on scene making that call.
Okay.
And then behind the scenes, while all that's going on, we're starting to assemble and work with our search and rescue folks, our Jeep posse, our incident command team, and getting them ramped up. So there's a lot going on, but our primary focus is to get those folks out of their homes. And I got up there within the first hour, and deputies were just all over the town, making sure we were getting to everyone as quickly as possible, identifying the handicap, arranging for ambulance transportation, and on and on. So, you know, the first couple hours was just deputies door to door, letting folks know it's time to leave.
At that point in time, when you start the evacuations, just how far away was the fire? I mean, did you have a couple hours to actually get all this stuff organized?
No, it was close. It was immediate. You know, they were going into there was basically 5 roads on the east side of Yarnell that were being evacuated, and they had to go right now.
Okay.
They didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare.
Some folks know the Ranch House restaurant up there, and it was kind of south and east of that, and it was coming over the hill, and there's no time to waste. So in this case, and again, as I mentioned earlier to you before we started, you can't predict what's going to happen in any of these situations. Sometimes we have the opportunity to take our time to let folks know and give them time to get things together to leave. This was not the case, and that's why the preparedness aspect of this is so important for the folks involved.
I don't think these fires are taken lightly at all anymore. The Yarnell Hill fire, we started out, it was like a 6-acre fire, and I remember Brad Miller telling me at the time that Arizona State Forestry said no big deal, it's just a small fire, it'll be out. Well, later down in the evening, I had someone call me and say, how come you're not talking about these firefighters that were killed in the blaze? And I thought, what fire? What blaze? Yeah. And then, since then, I've noticed like this one right here. It starts out as an acre, but it's really dry. We've got some wind going on, and they just blow up.
They blow up, and this is untouched land as far as the fire is concerned, apparently for years. Opposite side of town, as opposed to the 2013 Yarnell fire. So fresh, dry brush, and as you can see, and I think I provided some photos, it just took off and became a mandatory evacuation right as soon as the deputies got into town.
Okay.
Most fires that cause injury, death, and stuff like that, most of them are either small fires or small parts of big fires. So, like, you go back to the Yarnell Hill fire, that thing was pretty well behaved for several days. BLM was fighting it and everything, and then all of a sudden the weather changed, and this thing swung around 180 degrees and hit new fuel, and it was off and going. So the danger is being complacent about watching the fire behavior, because this thing can turn into a beast just in a really short period of time.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so I'm at home.
Yeah.
Jim, you knock on my door, and I don't know that there's a fire. I'm just watching TV. I haven't been looking out the windows. What are you doing when I open that door? What takes place?
Well, it kind of depends on how far away the fire is. So we basically have 3 different stages of notification. The least immediate one would be just an alert, a warning. So we did that on the Tenderfoot fire. We did that about the 3rd day in for the Wagner Road corridor up in Walnut Grove and up in there. So we had projected that we had several days advance notice there. So on I believe it was Friday. It was like the 3rd day into this fire that we had enough time, and we had enough resources down there. We were able to go up in the Walnut Grove area and just give them an alert, talk to them, tell them they have time to prepare. A lot of those folks were on ranches and stuff, so they had livestock they needed to take care of and stuff like that. So that gave them enough.
Okay, so they need more time. Okay,
yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, so we were at that point, we were working 2 to 3 days ahead of the fire. Okay, now if you back up a little bit, on the 2nd day of the fire, the Tenderfoot fire, the fire IC got up in the helicopter early in the morning, and he flew around all day getting a look on this fire. And when he came back down, we found out that he had set a management action point, a trigger point, to protect the east side of Peoples Valley, the east side of the highway. Okay, and the fire at that time was burning to the northeast, away from there. But then later on in the afternoon, when the wind started to come up, it started to make a run towards Peoples Valley. Well, we had enough time. We had this trigger point set. So we sent volunteers into the east side, and they gave the 2nd level of alert in there, and that was a pre-evacuation notification.
Okay, be ready. Be real ready.
Get your stuff ready.
Okay.
You know, in all likelihood, you're going to be evacuated, but you got a little bit of time right now to get your stuff together. And we would have time going door to door. They would have a little bit of time to talk to the people, and at the second job that they're doing is they're documenting all of the houses in there, because we didn't have any decent maps of that area. So these guys are going door to door and talking to the folks, but at the same time, they're marking GPS waypoints and they're documenting how many houses, about how long is it going to take. Shortly after they got done with that, maybe half an hour after they finished that job, the fire hit the trigger point. Those same guys went back in, told everybody, say, okay, it's mandatory, you got to get out now. So there's your 3 different levels of notification.
And this intel they provide to the Fire Incident Command is critical, because it helps us decide, you know, what we need to do, what resources we need. So to be able to get in early is kind of a luxury, but it doesn't always happen that way. We want to stress to folks, you can't always rely on the fact you're going to have time to gather your belongings, you know, relax a minute, sip some coffee. It doesn't always happen that way. That's why thinking of these things ahead of time is so critical.
Yeah, because if the fire, like I see here on some of these pictures we've got coming up on the screen, and I'm looking at the Dwight rod, that fire is like right outside some people's doors. I think Becky was saying, one gal was saying it was like 10 feet from her house when she was told to get out. So at that very moment, I don't have time to think about anything other than to just get out. So we have to take our first break, okay?
Okay.
We're talking about the Tenderfoot fire with the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, as well as search and rescue. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family?
This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry.
Go along, son!
it's always worth it.
Whoa! Master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you're beautiful. I got bullied for wearing against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. Our whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
Thanks.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're talking about evacuations using the Tenderfoot Fire, the most recent fire down in Yarnell, as the example for today's show with Yavapai County Sheriff's Office spokesman Dwight Dievelin and Incident Command Team member Jim Miller. YCSOAZ.gov is a good website to go to. That's Dwight's website there. Emergency notification system, all that good stuff is located right there.
Thank you for mentioning that. Please, please sign up for the Code Red, we call it, but it's emergency notification. You can click on a link right on the home page. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes. You get a verification phone call, and all the information is private.
That's a huge help, too.
Yeah.
All right, Dwight, you show up at my house, one of your deputies shows up at my house, there's a fire beating on my door, and I say, no, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
What's the course of action there?
Yeah, great question. In most states, and Arizona included, we cannot force you out of your home. Now, there are a few exceptions, and we understand people do not want to leave their home. They want to sort of, you know, go down with the ship.
Go down with the ship,
as
that's
it
what
were,
I'm thinking, yeah.
Which could happen. Back in 2013, we had a lot of folks refuse to leave. As the fire was crushing a hill by their properties, they did leave. It was, unfortunately, no one was injured and no one was killed. Mm-hmm. We did have quite a few folks in this fire refuse to leave, and what happens is we encourage them to make a wise decision. The only thing that could change for deputies is if they see young children in the home and there's a feeling that the decision made by their guardian is not proper based on what the deputies know, a fire coming right over the hill, we're going to take those kids and encourage the adults to leave under the idea that they're being endangered. Mm-hmm. So that's where law enforcement could step in some cases. Courts have held that to be a legal remedy we have to protect children, mm-hmm. or the handicapped that maybe can't make a rational decision, and the guardian is saying, I'm staying with this person who's handicapped. No, based on what we know, we're going to remove them.
Okay.
Okay. But it doesn't happen very often, but if it needs to be done, we'll do it. Once we have the mandatory evacuation in place, and if you don't want to leave your home, you must stay on your property. If you leave your property, you're subject to arrest.
Now, when you say property, let's make that clear. Is it my house or?
It's property. It's actual
the property line.
Right.
Okay.
And we've had rare occasions where folks have left the property and are wandering around the community, and they are subject to arrest. Usually we just ask them to leave. But once you leave, you can't come back in. Several reasons for that. It allows fire personnel and equipment to be roaming the neighborhood because they need the space. Mm-hmm. And we don't want these folks we don't know anything about to be in the neighborhood, not understanding where they were or who they are, and the fact that they're putting themselves at risk. Also, the other factor is protecting the community from looting. And to have folks just roaming around, most residents would appreciate someone just taking advantage of the fact, and it happened in Yarnell, mm-hmm. taking advantage of the fact that I know that home's unoccupied, I know there's some stuff in there I want. And we had two arrests out of that 2013. Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons why we try and keep tight control on a situation involving a mandatory evacuation.
Who blocks the roads, and then how those shifts kind of work out? They've got to be pretty long shifts. And
they're very
quite a
long
job.
shifts. Thanks to our volunteers, our VIPs, and of course deputies brought in. Just over the last year, Sheriff Masher has put together an emergency response team using all our detention officers right here at the Camp Verde Jail. So we had a herd of them come in and help relieve the deputies and some of the other personnel so they could go out and do other work.
Oh, okay. So that's a new program then.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We've got them trained to drive buses. We've got them trained to drive our command post, which is this large motorhome, and they're trained to do basically emergency response type duty. So it gives us a whole additional cadre of folks, and it's worked out very well.
I heard there was some interesting uses of vehicles too, like buses or something during this evacuation in some cases. What was that all about?
Yeah, well, we had a small number of functional needs folks that needed help, assistance in evacuation, and so we got a hold of emergency management, and they sent some buses down for transport. So one of the things that we do when we're evacuating is we try and provide the means for compliance with the evacuation. So if folks don't have transportation, or maybe they have some problems with pets, something like that, we're going to try and provide that for them. Now, in the case of transportation, we're busy inside that neighborhood. We'll get people out to a safe area, set up a transport staging area, and then we'll turn it over to the EOC. Let them bring buses down, pick these people up, and take them to the shelter.
Gotcha.
Same thing with pets. If somebody has a problem with small type pets, we have animal control units that can be stationed at the incident command post. Help them get them out. Same thing. Take them to a staging area, and then we'll work with Animal Disaster Services or somebody like that to get them up to the shelter.
You guys train a lot for this, don't you?
Yeah, and a lot of it is
it went really smoothly
real scenario training. In
Yeah.
other words, there's so much going on, and we go through this so many times, not in a training mode, but we use it as Jim and I were talking the other day. They use a lot of what happens as the fire's kind of winding down to debrief, train, talk to folks.
We use it as a tabletop.
Yeah.
So like the notification along Wagner Road, it was something we wanted to do before we secured. We wanted to have an evacuation plan in case the fire did get that far north. But we probably put a lot more people in there than was necessary just to get the training value out of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So.
Oh, I see exactly. Yeah. Well,
we were doing the same thing on the incident command team. We were changing jobs and stuff like that to give people real life training.
And for some of the detention officers that came out for the first time, this is what a great training time for them too, to understand what's going on. So we'll insert them with another, deputy who's been around for a while, maybe a training deputy, and they get to work together so they get a feel for what we do in there, and it's fantastic for us that way. I mean, it's a tragic situation that we're even asking folks to have to leave their home, but on the training side, using the scenario that we're going through is just a great experience for everybody.
A lot of moving parts out there, so the more that more variety of stuff that everybody gets a chance to see, the better trained they are.
All right, we got to take our second break.
Okay.
Website again is YCSOAZ.gov. YCSOAZ.gov for the emergency notification system. A lot of different information on there in terms of what we're talking about today, which is the evacuation, using the Tenderfoot Fire as an example that was down by Yarnell. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Come celebrate summer and agriculture at the 25th Annual Camp Verde Corn Fest, July 15th and 16th in downtown Camp Verde. Enjoy fire-roasted sweet corn, live music, beer garden, craft fair, cornhole contest, plus kids contests and activities. The Fort Verde State Historic Park will host a vintage baseball game and Adobe brickmaking demonstrations. Celebrate the summer season and the delicious sweet corn from Camp Verde at the 25th Annual Corn Fest.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your closet. Still no jobs? Just more stuff? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, my dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke.
I'm Paul George, and I want you to spot a stroke fast.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911.
Protect the ones you love.
Spot a stroke fast.
Welcome back to Countywide. Just a couple minutes left in the program. Again, go to YCSOevac.gov to kind of sign up for the Code Red system. That way, if there's an emergency in your area, all you guys have got to do is push a button, and it basically sends me a phone call.
A phone call, a text
message,
email.
An email.
It's fantastic and
Lets me know.
very important to do.
Okay, all right. Now, the fire's done. And we were talking just off camera here that I was thinking that sometimes it takes forever to get people back home, but re-entry.
It feels that way sometimes to folks, yeah.
Re-entry, how does re-entry work real quick?
There's a lot of stakeholders involved. There's the utilities companies, the fire guys, emergency management has to provide for folks' needs. Sheriff's office, obviously.
Utilities, you know.
Yeah,
it just
so there's a lot of people that have a stake in whether people go back in or not. And so as we start getting close to that, there's meetings during the day. People are talking about it, and not everybody is on the same page. You know, the sheriff's office sometimes is ready to let everybody back in, whereas maybe the EOC or the utilities companies have an issue. And most of the time it's a safety issue. Mm-hmm. So everybody has to be in agreement. So it's not like with an evacuation where one person could probably trigger it and get everybody out. When you do a re-entry, it's almost like a committee that has to agree.
And we want folks, once they go in, not to have to leave again.
We were talking about that during the break. It would be awful if I came home with my stuff, my dogs and my kids and everything, got all unpacked, and then an hour later, I got Jim or Dwight knocking on my door again saying, it flared back up again, you need to leave again.
Yep.
So
yeah, they're generally very conservative, but understanding that folks they want to get back home. They want to see if there's been any damage. That's why we try and feed them information too. And we knew throughout this fire that except for a few outbuildings, no homes were touched by this fire. And I think it gave the residents a sense of relief and not so much urgency to get back. They just wanted the town to be safe when they returned, and that's what happened.
Well, I'm going to tell you that in the last few fires that we've had, communication has been a difficult thing for me in terms of the media and getting that word out. But I want you to know that this fire went very well. I mean, I was able to talk to Arizona State Forestry. I was able to talk to you on a regular basis. Denny Folk, emergency management. Marcy Slay eventually took over. Well, she took over everything. Denny was my initial call, but Marcy took over everything. So I hope that we were able to put out the information that you guys were relaying to us.
Which is very critical for us.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just another one of those fingers out there. You got your Code Red, you got your emergency, you got InstaWeb, you got all these different locations, but people don't look at all those different things. So I thought it went very well this time.
I think we've learned a lot of lessons from just from 2013. There's been a lot of meetings, there's been a lot of training, and we're communicating within the various agencies a lot better. So hopefully that's reflected out to you. We have Facebook now. Just for folks that are on Facebook, we have a great page. We were pumping out photos and video of what was going on. Yeah. But to be able to hear the information over the radio is critical for us, so we want to make sure you're getting it too.
All right, Dwight, we're out of time. Good
that went fast, but thank you.
Jim, good to see you again.
Nice to be here.
Need some, just let us know.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Okay, that website again is YCSOAZ.gov. Thanks for watching and listening. This is Countywide. We'll talk to you again next time.